Alright, hello everybody. My name is Raymond. I unfortunately don't have any real cool nicknames or anything. You can call me Ray if you want. But I am currently here. Just a brief detailing of why I'm actually, say, recording this. I really don't enjoy my day-to-day ongoings, or however you want to phrase that, my life, if you will. But that's a little morbid, so we won't get into that really. But I do love Sixers basketball, and talking about Sixers basketball is always a really good way for me to kind of channel my energy into something that I really like. I think that's more positive than speaking negatively about my day to day. So I would love to gain some type of traction here on YouTube, just speaking, very subjectively about Sixers basketball. It's something I really enjoy doing. And so to start off here, if this ever does see the light of day, I'm actually just going to be going through the current roster of the Sixers and kind of giving my little bit, my 2 cents on it. It's currently August 30th. I actually will be detailing Anthony Tolliver at the very end. Spoiler alert, but he's not on the team anymore, I know. But I like Anthony Tolliver. It is relevant to me, so I'll get on with that in a little. I initially did the first take of this while I was out on a walk, and I literally spoke about these guys for an hour. So I'm going to cut it down. I'm going to try to make it kind of more palatable because no one wants to just hear me ramble on for about an hour about really irrelevant guys to a certain extent at some point. But here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah, so the roster currently stands at 18 or 19 guys. I think I may be missing one because it's not the most up-to-date. I still have Anthony Tolliver on here. So whoever I'm missing, feel free to let me know. Like I said, I'm not the most knowledgeable person. I really am subjective in my ideas for the Sixers. I don't follow contract talks a lot. I kind of understand the general premise of a lot of the money dealings. I understand that you have to align contracts to make a certain trade to work, things like that. But I haven't gotten too much into like specifics of contracts. I'm also not great at statistics. I have a few here and there spread in my mind, but I'm not going to be constantly referencing, specific statistics. It's just kind of things that I remember. If I do remember them, may even remember some incorrectly. So, without further ado, here we are. Charles Bassey is the first person. And Charles Bassey, 4-year guy. I don't know too much about him. I watched a little bit of Summer League. I think he played in Summer League just for a bit. I really didn't get the chance to watch it much. I was at work a lot. But, I tend to I tend to look favorably upon 4-year guys out of a college. I think they come in ready to produce. Clearly more NBA ready a lot of the times. I mean, you look at Thibault and the impact he was able to make. He's all defensive second in his second year in the league. Like that is incredible. That's ridiculous. So I really think he's a great player. Just to kind of harp on as an example, but bringing in Charles Bassey, the big thing was that he could potentially act as a backup that could space the floor a little bit better than our past backups like Dwight Howard. I know the controversy with Drummond signing was how is he going to space the floor any better than Dwight Howard did. So Charles Bassey to me seems like he's kind of a player you bring along in these upcoming years. He's a little bit closer to being able to produce if he ever becomes that type of player than he would be if he were just, say, straight out of high school. But or straight out of 1 year of college. But I don't even know if he's a 4-year guy, to tell you the truth. I really have no idea. Did he? Like I said, I don't think it matters too much. Charles Bassey, I like what he can do. I just haven't watched too much of him, so I can't speak too extensively on him. I feel like I've already taken too much time up with him. Gary Clark Jr., whoever he may be, I've seen him on like the Orlando Magic's 2K roster from time and time again. When I used to play a lot more 2K, I tried to just pull up everyone's Google, like just Google, I guess, homepage after looking up their name, and I actually got a musician instead of normal basketball Gary Clark. So don't really need to speak too extensively on him. He's more going to be someone you have at training camp. I haven't heard bad things. That kind of just means he falls into, the 70% of NBA players that don't really have, clout or fame about them. They really are. Obviously, they're in the NBA. They have a certain amount of fame, but they're kind of just those role players that go along with it. Don't really have much to say about him. Seth Curry. I love Seth Curry, and I think initially when, that Josh Richardson trade was made, a lot of people doubted the value we were getting out of Josh Richardson. You looked at Seth Curry, and you were like, okay, objectively speaking, Josh Richardson may be better at winning a basketball game on his own than Seth Curry would be, just because Seth Curry isn't the greatest defender, whereas Josh Richardson obviously offers a little bit more perimeter defense. But I mean, you look at the Sixers, and when you look at the one-on-one player comparison between Seth Curry and Josh Richardson, you're like, okay, Josh Richardson is obviously a better player, but Seth Curry fit so seamlessly into the Sixers roster. I was a huge advocate for this trade as soon as it happened. I was so happy to see Seth Curry. He kind of did replace JJ Redick. He's a bit more of a spot-up shooter. Kind of likes his deep twos, his pull-up twos a little bit more than JJ. It's not quite as active off-ball. They don't run that same little, handoff scheme that Embiid and Redick did. And I really wish we did look into getting Redick back. It sounds like he's more focused on going to New York, being around his family, which is completely understandable. I get it. But I would love to see Redick again with Embiid. That was just magical. That was literally the best offense in the entire NBA when we had it. I think Simmons, that would really benefit Simmons as well, but I'm kind of digressing farther away from Seth Curry. And Seth Curry is really good. He's on a really valuable contract too. I can't say enough good things about Seth Curry. I would love to talk more in depth about him. My big thing is that it's always like the little, like, oh yeah, he's more efficient through his career than his brother Steph. And it's like, that's great. Obviously it's not on higher volume, but recently, as he's gotten more and more of a role and solidified himself as an NBA player, he has been shooting more and more, at higher volumes, and he's keeping an incredible efficiency to him. So I love Seth Curry. I am so glad we have him on contract for at least another year or two, I'm pretty sure. It is really helpful to have him. He's just a great fit alongside Embiid. He kind of makes the fit with Simmons a little bit more viable, although, obviously there are reports recently that Simmons is on his way out the door. I guess kind of, clashing reports of him being kind of expected to show up at summer camp or holding out or expecting to be on the roster, this and that. But then recently, I think literally like 20 minutes ago, I saw a report that everyone expects him to be traded, so I don't know. Once again, though, digressing from Seth Curry, great player. Andre Drummond, I don't want to talk too much about him because, he is a notable player already. People know about him. My take always was, in Detroit, he's kind of just a stat sheet, like a stat pattern. He doesn't do anything that really adds to winning a basketball game, at least on his own. He can't be the centerpiece by any means, because he really will just miss a hook shot and then grab his own rebound and then probably make a basket. And that's not enough to do as like a focal point, but as a bench player, his rebounding, like tenacity, his ability to rebound, is incredible. I think this is obviously like a humbling experience for him, for Andre Drummond. I mean, he was an all-star at one point, which I don't necessarily think was deserved, but, the league did. So he was an all-star at one point, I believe, and obviously, signing to a minimum deal, that's got to be a humbling experience. You got to be ready to work and try to regain that traction amongst the league. But yeah, I think he was a great value pickup. I mean, you get him on the veterans minimum. This is a former all-star, whether that be deserved or not. You couldn't get better value out of the free agency market for a backup center. You couldn't. Next we have Joel Embiid, and I really don't have to harp too much on him. There's not much to say other than, wow, what a guy. What a guy. I mean, just like embodies Philadelphia. He's just so good. I really, knock on wood, that he just stays healthy, because he's so dominant. He's clear MVP. If he were to have played, even 10, 15 more games in the season. Really, just obvious MVP. I will say I did doubt him at one point, not because of his skill. It was never because of the skill, but I still am worried about his health and his longevity. I'm glad we got him to a long-term deal, but that doesn't change his health status, his health concerns. He's just a big guy. When you're keeping that much weight and that much mass on a set of two legs, you're bound to be at risk of foot injuries, leg injuries, all of that. And so it's plagued him for quite a while. But gosh, when he is healthy, he is just the biggest game changer. I mean, last year when he really decided to just like focus in on his conditioning, and I think he even acknowledged it. This was like the first year, last year was the first year he really took things as seriously as he should have been, where he changed his diet and his entire fitness regime to become a better player. And he obviously he trains hard, he works hard, he's an NBA player, but dieting is the biggest thing that I think is usually just remains unspoken. I feel like that's the difference maker for a lot of players in the NBA about their longevity and their conditioning throughout the year. And I think the same can be said about Joel. Danny Green, obviously when he first came over, there were some questions. It was like, what is he going to do? Kind of coming off an odd year with the Lakers when he won a chip, where it was like, how valuable was he actually? And I think he did nothing but prove how valuable he was during his first year as a Sixer. And I'm really glad we got him. We re-signed him. And boy, what a good contract. Like, what a team-friendly contract we got him back on. I mean, I don't remember the exact money. What was it? Let's see. Let me click on an article. 2-year, 20 mil to get like a solidified 3-and-D player with veteran experience, with championship experience for 10 mil a year. Like, I understand he's on the decline, but that is such great value. Like, Daryl Morey, I know he didn't have a great offseason in acquiring new players, but he really held on to some players for really good deals. I mean, wow. 10 mil a year for Danny Green is really good, actually. 10 mil, I like that. But great 3-and-D player, I can't speak good enough about him. Tobias Harris, I just want to start off by saying he's grossly overpaid. He really is. I'm still not over it. I understand why we gave it the max, because, you wanted to keep that piece. You didn't want to make it just like a half-year rental from LA. But gosh, he is so overpaid. He's a great player. He's really efficient. He dropped over 20 a game on near 50, 40, 90. Like that, he probably was deserving of an all-star nod, especially mid-season. I mean, the Sixers were playing so well at that point. They really were. And this guy was probably, I think he was in the 50, 40, 90 club at that point, or at least 2% off on his free throw or something. It was ridiculous. Really efficient player. Defense, he's come a long way. He's doing better. Obviously, I really like him. I don't necessarily know if he can be kind of the binding force for Simmons and Joel Embiid per se, but I don't know if anybody can at this point, and that's a whole nother discussion to have. Really love Tobias Harris, really love his game, but of course, just grossly overpaid. I mean, that's so much money. That's so much money. I know other teams would have given that to him, and we kind of had to do it, but wow, that's so much money. Isaiah Joe, I really like Isaiah Joe. Out of Arkansas, second year. I hope to see him get a little bit more playing time, even if it's just garbage time at the end of the games. I like how confidently he was shooting in Summer League. He had the ball in his hand a little bit more, and that was kind of interesting because he showed some flashes. Obviously, there's a lot of development to be done there. Boy, if they wanted to, they could. The Sixers, the Delaware Blue Coats, could just have a crazy lineup. I mean, Paul Reed, if he comes back to the G League, Isaiah Joe, he's making strides as well. I feel like Shake Milton's a little bit too far along, but even if you throw him down there sometimes, he might be good. Isaiah Joe, though, I really like him. I think he's got a lot of upside. I think it's worth it to try and develop him. They have a lot of good young players, the Sixers. I mean, they're not huge names a lot of the times, but there are a lot of decent little pieces you could start to, build a supporting cast out of. I don't know if the timeline works with Embiid, but say if you were building around Simmons, which clearly you're not at this point, but if you were, it might work. Furkan Korkmaz. Korkmaz, I am pretty hit or miss with Korkmaz. It really depends on the game, much like his shooting and consistency. I understand he has the ability to shoot. I really like how crafty he is with that pump fake. He can kind of make something out of nothing a lot of the times, which is pretty impressive. His defense, he also looked pretty good on defense this last season. You know, I like his story as well. It's just cool that he kind of keeps working and working to try and get a better and better contract. And honestly, for what was it, 3 years, 15 mil, I am not mad at that contract. I mean, that is, once again, really solid value. I just wanted to touch back on Daryl Morey. Just having a good, he really got good value out of, I guess, re-signing players. You know, Danny Green and Furkan Korkmaz, those are two value guys. Two good 3-and-D players to fill alongside Embiid. Tyrese Maxey, I like Tyrese Maxey. He looked really confident in Summer League, and you hope that he kind of develops into that player in the NBA as well. Unfortunately, my biggest concern with him is always not if he will develop, but when he will develop. And I don't necessarily think that coincides with when Embiid is at his most valuable. And so I have been a big advocate, actually, of trading Maxey. When he was initially, you know, popping off in the league, they had that Nuggets game where, you know, they were COVID-ridden or something, like, pandemic just beat him down, and Maxey was, you know, the guy that game, dropped like 39 or something. I really liked him, but I thought that was when you kind of need to sell high. You know, I didn't want to get rid of him and Thibault in like a Simmons trade for Harden, but I was mostly worried about getting rid of Thibault more than Maxey. I think Thibault, because he's like a 4-year guy, he coincides with the timeline of Embiid a little bit better than Maxey would, whereas Maxey still needs probably, I think, 2 or 3 years until he can be really a reliable pick-and-roll guy, you know, kind of create for himself. Because he's got some moves, and obviously he's got the quickness, he's got some grit to him as well. He's not like a pushover defensively, he's just kind of small. I just don't think his shot is consistent enough right now. You know, his mid-range pull-up looks really good, but he looks a little uncomfortable from behind the three-point line, so that's holding him back right now. I hope that's the next thing that he really develops. Otherwise, I still think we may want to look into trading him, because he is a really valuable asset, but I think his value is only going to go up from here, I think, so, I mean, it might not hurt to just keep him around for a little bit. We'll see how he develops. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in like a mid-year trade with Ben Simmons, if Simmons ends up staying around for a little. Next is Shake Milton, and I was a big advocate for Shake Milton too. Unfortunately, he has been very inconsistent. You know, I think initially when say he gets the 39-point game, that's kind of when you need that outbreak against the Clippers. That's when you need to keep him on a little bit of a tighter leash and kind of be like, hey, I really like what you gave me there, but you need to hone in on these certain things. And they kind of just let him run loose after that. And they didn't give him the keys to the offense per se, but they really expanded his role quickly. And I don't think that was good for his development. And Shake Milton, my only problem with him now is that he is always looking for a foul. I don't think he plays the game with the intention to score all the time. Sometimes he plays the game with the intention to draw a foul. And that's fine for guys like Embiid, where he is very methodical in his approach. You know, he gets on his pivot foot and he kind of works you. He does a jab step. He does that like rip through that always catches someone's arm on the attempt of the shot. But with a guard, you can't really do that as much because you're going downhill at someone. You know, you don't have like a pivot foot planted. You don't have the time to operate like that. You are really just going up in the air. And your hang time determines how much time you have to necessarily make a decision. So a lot of times Shake Milton just looks like he's throwing up a shot to bail himself out because he didn't get a call. And then he moans to the refs. So I like Shake Milton. You know, I think he's got a lot of talent. I just think he needs to hone in it a little bit better. I think he might need to be a little bit more disciplined from a coaching perspective. Because, you know, he is instant offense. He is instant offense. You saw it, at the end of one of those Hawks games? It was like the Shake Milton fourth quarter and like into the third. I don't know. It was ridiculous, and that's why I like Shake Milton. He really needs a little bit more discipline. Someone's just got to tell him to cut the shit with the trying to draw the foul thing, because he'd be so much more efficient if he just played his game. Georges Niang, really like the pickup. I'm curious to see how much he plays. Obviously, we needed a better backup four, and I don't know if Georges Niang is necessarily the answer for like a championship aspiration team, but clearly better than anything that Mike Scott can give you. Just a lot more playmaking. Like Georges Niang at Iowa State was, from what I watched, was just a beast. I mean, he was definitely, what a great transition to the NBA too, because he was the man at Iowa State. The offense ran directly through him. He would take the ball at like top of the key or like low post, and he would have the entire offense go around him. So he'd either make a play or make a play for somebody, and just a completely different role in the NBA. Now he's more of a spot-up shooter kind of guy. You know, he can make the extra pass, swing the ball. I don't think he's the greatest at defense. I see that he is only 6'7", so it's not great. But Mike Scott is only 6'7" at this point too. You know, he's getting older, so he's not very nimble. Georges Niang, I like the signing. I thought it was good. Filip Petrusev, he's here. He got drafted. He could have came over this year, I'm pretty sure, but I think he signed like another one-year deal. I'm curious to see how he pans out. I think this was another, Morey kind of explained it where he wanted a backup that gets space the floor a little bit more. So he did that with Charles Bassey, Jesus, and Petrusev here. But I mean, they're not going to play much, I don't think. Petrusev obviously still overseas. Don't want to talk too much about him. Paul Reed, a lot of upside. I really like him. I saw a post from some type of Sixers fanatic that was talking about Paul Reed and Andre Drummond on the court together. And just how much of a rebounding terror they could put on any other team. That is ridiculous to think about, because Andre Drummond is so physically imposing. He is just a big guy. You know, he's got that little bit of extra weight on him where he's not jacked. He doesn't look jacked, but that makes him really hard to move around. And that's why he's so good at rebounding too, because he's pretty athletic to go along with that kind of huskier build. And Paul Reed is just a workhorse. So you get that mixed together, in a lineup together. Like the spacing, obviously it's not perfect. Paul Reed is more of a small ball five because he's not the most consistent shooter yet. Granted, I'm pretty sure he did shoot around 40% or so from the 3-point line when he was the G League MVP, but I still don't know if I trust it. So it's definitely an odd lineup. You know, Paul Reed, I don't think he has a perfect fit on an NBA roster quite yet. I think he needs another year, mostly in the G League. I don't know if his contract has been converted or not, but if he's still a two-way, I think that's really good value. I think that's smart to send him back down to the G League just to do a little bit more development as well there. But I really like Paul Reed. You know, obviously that kind of work ethic. He reminds me a lot of like a Kenneth Faried or a Richaun Holmes, to where they can make their career off of just how hard they work. Obviously, the longevity is in question for those two guys. I mean, Kenneth Faried is out of the league already. I think he's only like 31, 32. Don't quote me on that. He could be younger, could be a little bit older, I guess. And Richaun Holmes, like he's still on the up and up, but he reminds me a lot of Kenneth Faried, where he's just, it's all effort with him. I mean, Richaun Holmes, a little bit more, I don't even want to say fine-tuned. I just think he's smarter about the role he plays than Kenneth Faried. He's just also a little bit bigger in general. But this is supposed to be about Paul Reed. And Paul Reed's really good. I like Paul Reed. I think he's got a lot to offer. I don't know if it quite aligns with this season. And he does look really awkward on the court. So I'm not 100% confident in running him in, say, like playoff scenarios or anything. But I would love to see this guy develop a little more. He's one of those players where it's like, I love having him as a Sixers fan, but I know he could be better almost anywhere else he goes, if he's just given the opportunity. Mike Scott, just what a wash. Like, I don't know why we still have him. I really think it's just because he's like $5 million you can attach to any given trade you have to get done. Like, he's extra money to have around. I know they recently just waived Anthony Tolliver, but I much prefer him over Mike Scott, simply because he's a better, like, veteran presence in the locker room. So I think Mike Scott's getting traded or waived at some point. He just doesn't have anything to offer anymore. You know, the one thing that he brought was he could consistently shoot 40% as a stretch four, 40% from three, I mean, and he can't do that anymore. Like these past couple seasons, he has not been a consistent shooter, and that's why he's, you know, on his way out of the rotation. Oh, okay. Benjamin David Simmons. Oh boy. Okay. Really, it comes down to just Ben Simmons. We talk about how elite he is at everything else, and you know, even on offense, he is super good at quite a few things. There's a lot of difficulty in deciphering whether he's super good at finishing around the rim or he's got no touch at all. Like I've seen certain videos saying that he's just got awful touch, like nothing coming off of his hands looks right, but he also shoots very efficiently from inside, inside the paint. So I don't know. What it comes down to for me, and I can talk about this concept a little bit more in the future, it comes down to not making a defender make a decision. And you know, Ben Simmons on defense even makes an offensive player make a decision, and that's why he's so elite. You know, he can get into the driver's seat as a defender, which is kind of crazy. On offense, you know, when he's playmaking, when he's in a fast break, excuse me, he is nearly unstoppable because he makes a defender make a quick decision. Now, when you're in a half-court game and you're set up now behind the three-point line, and you do not show a willingness to shoot, that is one less decision a defender will have to make. So with guys like Giannis per se, or even Joel Embiid, you know, Joel Embiid, when he was shooting higher volume threes, was not good at them. You know, he was low 30% at best. So you would have been a lot smarter as a defender to just not guard him out there, really. I mean, just put a hand up, but don't jump or anything. But that accentuated pump fake works for Joel Embiid because he has shown that willingness to shoot. And that's one more decision that a defender has to make. They now have to think, do I want to guard this guy from out here while he's attempting a shot? And same with Giannis. I mean, Giannis is like a, 27, 28% three-point shooter? Like, he's not good at shooting. You're much better off letting him shoot that shot. But people still, you know, give him the respect of guarding him out there because that's another decision you have to make. You have to think as a defender, is he going to shoot this? Am I going to give him this shot? And with Ben Simmons, it simplifies it so much for a defender because you don't have to make that decision. You don't have to make that decision from, 20 feet out from beyond the arc. You only have to make that decision when he's like 8 foot in. So you can, you know, I saw a practice the other day, or like a training drill from what Ben Simmons was doing over the summer. And he was navigating a pick and roll. He was navigating a pick and roll with a defender going over on him. Going over a pick and roll. And like basically like trailing him. And how he like, I guess, slithered or like snaked the screen. And it's like, boy, he looked really comfortable doing that, but he's never going to do that from more than like 8 feet out. And so Ben Simmons is just so frustrating because it really comes down to just his willingness to shoot. I don't even care if he makes a lot of them. If he shot 30, just 30% from three on maybe 2 shots a game, it's not a big change. You know, 2 shots a game difference, that is not a big change in how Ben Simmons plays. But boy, would it make a difference in how well he can play. So he's very frustrating. You know, I'd love to give him one more chance, but I don't think there's time to do that anymore. I think he's gone. Matisse Thybulle, I can't speak highly enough about Matisse. I think we would give him even more credit as to how good of a defender he was if we didn't have Ben Simmons on our team. The Sixers fans are really spoiled with just a phenomenal defense. I mean, I know at times it looks a little patchy and a little rough, but my goodness, we have some phenomenal individual defenders. Matisse Thybulle, though, I love his development. Obviously came in as a four-year guy out of Washington. Very high character, like people like him around the team. I saw like a video of him and Furkan Korkmaz being buddy-buddy. That was cute. But I just love Matisse Thybulle. He looked really good on the Australian national team. He looked really good shooting the ball. Just so sneakily athletic. Could easily just put down like an East Bay in game if he wanted to. That's how athletic he looks. Jaden Springer, haven't seen too much of him. He looks a little bit like, obviously his mechanics are there, but with that being said, he looks a little bit mechanical in what he's doing. Like, it looks a little bit too orthodox almost. Like, he doesn't have any finesse or like fluidity to his game. It looks like he has very clearly practiced these moves in a non-game setting, and is now trying to put those into a game setting. So it doesn't always look great. I think being around an NBA team and, kind of that red shirt concept that's been explored, that might be a really good option. He's once again a guy that I'm excited for. He looked good. I'm glad he showed some of his potential in summer league. But it just worries me because it's not. I don't know if that's necessarily gonna tie in well with just the other timeline that's set forth right now for the Sixers with, Embiid and win now, Tobias Harris and win now, things like that. And lastly, Anthony Tolliver, and I wouldn't be touching on this if I didn't have a picture relevant. So up here, this is me and Anthony Tolliver. That's really it. Good guy. I followed him on Instagram. He seems like a good veteran to have. Obviously a journeyman. He's been on 15 of the NBA teams now. And that's pretty cool. That guy's got stories out the ass, doesn't he? I mean, he's just been everywhere.